Good morning, happy Monday. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice, Justin, and Kiri, who is not squeaky this morning. Nope, no squeaky. Nope. No, Kiri's having a morning, and we have a high chance of Kiri emergency, so you know. So we'll progress, and we'll hope that the Kiri emergency does not come to pass. Yeah, we shall see how it happens, right? Dear me. Yes, the sploosh. So guess what, guys? We're going to use a color, because for the Patreon I've been working on swatches for the pirate colors from ReaperCon that are now in release under Bones, I believe. So we're going to use, I think we're going to use Sharkbite to do some transparent cloth on this girl. It's either going to be Sharkbite or Kraken Ink. I like both of these, or Kraken, depending on how you like to say it. I suppose Greek is probably Kraken, right? So I was playing with these, and I like them a lot. They're great colors. Good job, Sadie. But I was thinking I would do some transparent cloth. Yeah, like I said, if you're on my Patreon, you're going to get a PDF on these. I'm going to do probably 2 PDFs, one this month and one next month, splitting them into 6 just to talk about each of the paints. People had asked for this a while ago. I just had other things that I was planning, so like now I can finally fit them in. And thanks for your patience on the Patreon stuff, guys. I've been working hard on commissions and finally have some finished, or they'll be finished today. So now I can jump back into the Patreon. It's like this dance, right, where you're balancing stuff. So all right, I need to get a little block. So I'm gonna need to take one of my happy little Targaryens off of her block so that I can put her. There she is. So I can put her put the dancing girl on it instead. Usurping the block. There we go. Awesome. The orange is like Elmer's sticky tack, and I find that it's like usually way too sticky, but when you have a little miniature that has a small base that you want to really stick on, sometimes the orange can be the answer. Sometimes I have to peel it off and like re-smush it. That's another thing. If you notice your sticky tack is less sticky, it's just like silly putty. If you warm it up, it tends to become more sticky. So then just smoosh it around a little bit and put it back on your block or your whatever you're using for your miniature platform. I tend to like to curl it around the edges just a little bit for extra stability, because sometimes if it's not real sticky, it'll want to come off. So, and these are the little blocks that you can order them on Amazon or find them at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Up to you. But I like these little 1-inch blocks for 28mm figures. They're pretty much easy to hold, and it should always be, whatever you use, it should always be comfortable to hold. And then, it's the right size for the figure. There we go. Smushing her down. It's that. She should be good. It's Tautronics. It's, I've got one right here. It's actually my left-hand light that I use. So T-A-O. So Tau. Tronics. Tronics. They have 3 different versions of different features, so just get the one. The one that Reaper bought is like the $39.99 one. It might be even cheaper now because they've got like 2 newer lights that are a little fancier with the way they swivel. So yeah, but they're all nice LED. Pretty much last forever, easy to travel with, stuff like that. So there you go, Twistedoma. Hey, Graphic Gem, how are you? Are you new? Up. Wait, a thing. Yeah, I haven't gotten as far as what I think of the Brinewind colors, I hadn't gotten a chance to use any of them, so it was like finally finding time to make because I don't like to just throw them into a stream if I don't, have an opinion yet, because then if I don't like it, that's not good. But I pretty much picked out like 3 that I think are, maybe 4 that are necessities. Like I would say, and keep in mind I tend to avoid metallics. So the Mermaid scale is cool and all, and Pieces of 8 is a very good dark silver. But as far as like the MVPs of this line, which I'll talk about more on my Patreon PDF, but these are the MVPs of the Brinewind paints as far as I'm concerned. Somebody asked me the other day, you guys, what was a good replacement for Old West Rose? It's Doxy Blush. That was very smart of Sadie to do that. I've actually, I trained her kind of on this kind of thinking, where if you're going to remove kind of a key paint from the line that you don't have a sub for already in another line, you should try to reformulate it to see if you can make out a more popular version of the color. So get this, guys. If you want because this is very similar to Old West Rose. It's that kind of like natural pink, which you can use for the inside of mouths and tongues and lips and all sorts of stuff. And if this one goes out of print, I don't know if we're ever going back, because the Antique Rose Triad went out of print. Then you canceled the Old West Rose, and now there's this. So we gotta keep something. We gotta keep one of these in print. So Doxy Blush, start using it for all your Monster Maws, and then use Monster Maw to highlight it. I think Monster Maw works that way. And keep it in print if you want one. But yeah, whoever was looking for an Old West Rose sub. Yes, I was gonna say, I checked my tray and I thought my mic was good. Oh, okay. Sweet. Cool, Graphic Gem. Well, I made the paint for Reaper up until the point in April where I left to be with my guy out here on the West Coast, and then I just started teaching remotely. So Reaper Master Series paint is what I did. I was also Reaper staff painter for over 10 years. I still technically staff paint for them, so I guess I could make that over 17 years now. So yeah, that's my background, and welcome to the stream. So these are really the ones that I think are MVPs, guys. The Kraken Ink is a really beautiful, dark, vibrant purple. It's got a lot of saturation to it. It's not muted like Styx Purple is. And Sharkbite here, I love Sharkbite. It's probably my favorite of all of the paints that came out with Brinewind. So I love it. It's a gorgeous, warm, dark, bluish teal. It covers like a dream. It's fantastic. And then Treasure Map, for those looking for a replacement for like Stained Ivory, this would be a pretty good sub-in, and it's also a good replacement for the Bone Triads that went out. So yeah. There we go. Cool. Hi, Coos. How's it going? So yeah, so those are my faves, and I'm thinking I'm going to use one of these. We're going to do transparent cloth on this model. I was going to do freehand, but then I looked even closer at her, and she's very difficult to do freehand on. And I'll talk about why that is. And there's actually, the reason is pretty much that the only place that's really good to do freehand on is her back. You've got so many folds up front. You've got lots of like dense folds here, and really sharp folds here, and there's a lot covering up other stuff. The tassels are covering up the front of her. So essentially doing freehand on this model is going to be a super pain in the butt. You'd have to do something very small, like a very small repeated pattern, if you were going to do freehand on her. On the other hand, the fact that her cloth is like clinging to her in areas means that putting a little bit of transparency, like on her hip here and the front, is totally doable. So I figured I would do that instead and try to find a different model for some serious freehand. And I've got, as usual, my primer seems to have failed me. So I'm going to grab my brush on primer, which I think I still have out here somewhere. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to just quick put a coat over the top of her to fix it. How's it going, Moon Glooms? So yeah, so Reaper brush on, a brush on primer is usually not going to adhere quite as well. It works in a different way. Like, it works like a normal primer chemically, but they're usually a little bit softer than a standard spray primer, because spray particle primers tend to be very fine, and that makes them a little bit more durable. These are a little softer, so they sometimes are a little more prone to rub off, depending, just usually on the corners and edges. Any primer that you use, you're going to get rub off if you handle the miniature often. It's just the way primer works. You're really, the metal's always going to be harder than the primer, is what I'm essentially saying. And since the metal is harder, if you put pressure on it, you're going to rub off the primer. It's just the primer is going to give before the metal does. So I'm going to put a drop of water into this and make it a little thinner, because really all I need is a really thin coat. Yeah, we're going to start. This is our last new model to start. So from now on, guys, like tomorrow is going to be Rock Troll. We're going to go in rotation. And I believe that John and Justin and all them have put up the rotation. Again, notice, by the way, that I'm using my flat for this, because I find that it gives me a more even coat over the whole of the figure. I find that I'll get more brush strokes if I use a round. So getting a flat, and this is just a Reaper Taklon flat. I think this is size 4, but you could use size 2, especially on a model this small. But it's it puts a nice even coat over everything, because it doesn't have a tip to create ridges in your primer. That's what pretty much happens. And putting on extra dry brush or primer over some areas that you feel might be, or wet brush, I should say, areas that you feel might be problematic, like the tips of the fingers up here where you might easily get rub off, is a decent idea. Pretty good back here. Gonna put a little bit here. She's pretty good up there. I'll do another coat over there. What is her hair doing? Oh, she has a little, does she have a little headscarf on? Yeah, she does. Okay, so yeah, she does. So she really doesn't, well, but that looks like a part. I can't tell what happened to her hair otherwise. Okay, so there's maybe hair? That's tassels though, I think. Yeah, so she only maybe has hair on the back of her head. I can't tell. This is weird. Is that supposed to be hair in the front? This is a good question. Bobby Jackson, where are you? Answer these questions, dang it. So essentially, we don't know, so we're gonna have to make it up. And that's fine. Any choice is valid. Like, if you decide that that this is her hair or this is a headdress, either way, you're fine. You're correct, essentially. We're not going to, like, jump on you for deciding to paint something like cloth when it's skin, or deciding to paint something like skin when it's cloth. All the rest of it. Hey, Arrowwiz, thanks for the... Ooh, it's your subiversary! Happy subiversary! Yay, subiversary! Yeah. All right, so yeah, I'm unsure about that. It really does look like she has a hairband with the little decorative thing here, and I can't decide if it's hair coming in there. I think I might paint it as hair. We'll decide. All right, so now we have to decide on a skin color. And right away, guys, when you're doing transparent cloth, light skin is going to be a lot easier than dark skin. Dark skin, it's very hard to show through the cloth while still carrying, like, the only way to do it is you either do a light skin with a darker color, or you do dark skin with a very light color. And so you can carry the dark skin if you use a lighter cloth color, but it's still going to be a lot more difficult to make that read correctly because you're going to be using a shadow, a dark color where your highlight would normally be. So that is a pain. I've actually never done it just because it's like, why make more trouble for myself? And I've never, like, usually with transparent cloth models, it's rare that I do one. And when I do, when I have in the past, it's always just been a character like, I did it on Circe for Dark Sword. And, you know, she was obviously a pale-skinned blonde, so, you know, stuff like that. You do it here and there. A lot of people will do it on vampires, because it's pretty cool to do on there. But I've never really done a dark-skinned model where I felt like doing translucent or transparent fabric. So I think, I don't know. I mean, I could go either way. There's pluses and minuses both ways. Like, I feel like the light skin is a better study for you guys if you've never done it before. Because, like I said, going darker skin is hard mode. So, shows a headband, did dark skin. Yeah, well, if Rhonda did dark, then I'll do light. And we'll go really light. Lighter than we've ever gone before. Let's see, what do I want to use? Let's dive down for... Let's grab our tan skin and pale flesh. Or do I have youthful? I have youthful, but where's my tan skin? It keeps going missing. There it is. Because I use it all the time. Yeah, there's definitely a headband. The question is it hair coming down on her front here? Or is it, like, cloth from the headband? Like, that was the problem I was running into. And that's actually a, yeah, that's what I was just saying to Kerniko. You either go dark skin with lighter fabric, or you go light skin with darker fabric. So going with a light skin is going to give you the most options, because you can use almost anything there. Whereas with dark skin, you're going to have, you know, diminishing returns the darker your cloth gets. It's going to be harder and harder with dark skin to make it look like transparent cloth, and your highlight areas on the cloth are going to end up being dark because that's where, you know, the light is shining through. So it's, you believe it's hair? Yeah, it's hard, and this is a 3D sculpting thing, right, guys? Like, the way that you sculpt hair for 28mm in 3D sculpting, it tends to be a little bit, like, just simplified, and so it can be hard to figure out, right? Whether it's, sorry, got distracted. Guys, I don't have streamer mode on, so don't PM me. Hold on. I am going to streamer mode. 1 second. Where is my streamer mode? I never know. Dang it. I always forget. Dang it. All right. I'll have to like just, I thought I'd enabled it and then Twitch promptly forgot it and etc. Enough complaints. So 1, 2, 3. As always, tan skin is my go-to for fair skin. I just don't even own the fair skin triad. The fair skin triad is great for you if you like to have everything just straight out of the bottle, but honestly, if you just add a white or an off-white to tan skin, you can make so many awesome pale skin tones. In this case, let's try some creamy ivory. Yeah, I mean, that's why we put painted images in our store, right? To help you guys out. So let's do a 2-to-1 with creamy ivory. This is gonna, essentially using a warm off-white with tan skin to build a skin tone, is gonna make us go more golden in the highlights. It's gonna take some of the pink out of the tan skin, make it go more golden. Might look more Asiatic, we'll see. It's kind of hard to push tan skin that far, because there's still a fair amount of reddishness in it, especially compared to the golden skin triad. But, yeah, so let's do it. And I always start with the shadow on the skin. We'll take this skin up really pale, though. Even with a really, really pale skin, guys, you still need a decent shadow. You've got to have some contrast in there to make all your, like, musculature and stuff stand out. Okay, that's a fair, so my mix of 2-to-1, tan skin, and, creamy ivory actually is a very pretty color to start with. Well, yeah, as well as be a painting aid, but I find it a great painting aid. So, all right, let's, ooh, this is going to overexpose fast if I do that. There, we'll bring our white back in. The problem with starting with white prime minis, you can't see anything. So, when you're doing transparent, okay, when I'm doing transparent cloth, right, you're going to start, anything that you're going to want to do transparent, you want to paint with skin tone. So, all this cloth here, underneath her, now we cannot paint the cups as clear because we're on Twitch. So we are not going to, we're going to make her, her brassiere, opaque. But if you were going to make it see-through, you would also paint that with skin color. And, using, either of these colors, by the way, either the Kraken Ink or the, Shark Bite, is going to be actually difficult. We're going a little bit on hard mode. The easiest colors I find to do transparent over skin tones are green and purple. Green because if you mix skin into it, it creates a pretty nice highlight. Yeah, I guess I could go darker with this one, but if Rhonda went darker with this one, we're gonna go light. That's the way I'm rolling. All right, so blocking all that. Kind of look at it. The headband will stay opaque. The bra will stay opaque, except for the areas down below it, which are probably filmy scarves and stuff, so I can get away with that. The strap's going to stay opaque. Anywhere the cloth is touching the model. So you aren't going to see transparency if the cloth is away from the skin. So any fold or anything like that is going to... 1 second. Yeah, Zero's Theory. It's, yeah. I mean, you could do Google, but for a Reaper, just go to the Reaper store, too. Like, the Reaper store has usually the painted image. If we have one, it's got a painted image up next to the white or the green or all the above. But yeah, I mean, Google always, for other companies, I mean, Google's where it's at. Just do it. And you get some really good painted images a lot of the time. You can also get some really, like, not good painted images. But that is the great, great thing about a randomized array. A search engine, right? It's going to give you everything. It's just going to give you the most viewed stuff most often. All right, so we got to be careful about where our skin is. Okay, so as I was saying, you aren't going to see any transparency on any of the cloth that is not right up against the skin. So right away, you can see her knee here. So we know that this part right here is going to get some transparency. And I'm just going to paint over the whole area. I'm just going to block it in. I'm not going to try to blend, not going to do anything. Just going to kind of block in. Okay. Now this here is a scarf coming down, so it's going to essentially be laid over the top of this underlying fabric. There's really no way that you're going to see skin through that. Use your common sense here. The only skin that you're going to see is right up against, is where the cloth is right up against the model. Wherever you can see the shape of the leg. And Bobby's helped us here pretty much by, you know, really showing us the shape of the thigh here. You can kind of see where it starts to fade out. Wherever you see the cloth start to pull away from the skin and go off on the side, because you can definitely tell her other leg is coming down like that, then just don't do it. Muse's Touch, you would need so many staff painters to paint all of the stuff that Reaper puts out. If you look at our release schedule, they used to ask me to paint all of that stuff every month, and essentially they got crappy paint jobs because of it, because you'd have to do quickie paint jobs on everything. So Reaper really, these days, it's a pick and choose thing. If Ron has an exceptional model, he'll try to get it painted, and otherwise, you know, we often just depend on the community to have a great example of it. And sometimes, or in the old days, we allowed you to submit your figure to our gallery, so that we could get more painted figures. I don't know if we still do that. I haven't checked on the status of that since the new website went up. Let's get this all here. So this looks like a darker skin tone. I mean, it's a fair skin tone, but you know, it's not super, super pale. But remember, this is our shadow. So everything from here is going to go up, and I'll have to see if we need even more. And I'm always pretty precise, as you can see when I'm putting on a base coat. The way I figure it, putting on a very neat base coat saves me work down the road. So I will try to be very precise and neat with my starting base coat so that I don't have to worry about it, touching it up later. Unless I'm on somewhere like the inside of the neck here where it's going to come up against the hair, then I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm just going to paint it. Val, this is a mix. All my fair skins are built off of tan skin. That's just the way I rock. So it's 4 drops of tan skin, 2 drops of creamy ivory. I decided to use ivory for a highlighter for it this time. What it's going to do is, because it's got yellow in it, it's going to take this a little more golden, and it's going to minimize the pink tone. Yeah, Facebook's just hard to search sometimes, Bean Mitch, but I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, Inspiration Gallery was great, but it's definitely not as important as some other infrastructure stuff. So, yeah, that means it's on Kit's list, and if he ever gets, like, time, he will work on it. Because, yeah, everybody liked the Inspiration Gallery. It did let people just submit photos, so at least we'd have something. But, yeah, you would need, with Reaper's release schedule, you would need an army of mini painters. Like, there's just, to get everything painted to the standard that Rhonda and Michael and I do. Because we're not fast, right? You could get, like, presentable miniatures done, but even then it's still, you know, it takes money to pay those painters, too, unless they're going to do it for the publicity. Which is, you know, nice, don't get me wrong, but... But yeah, there was only, like, when I was in the paint department, we didn't have, for a lot of the time, we didn't have a staff painter. So what Ron would do is if something came in where he was like, oh, I really want this model to be painted because I think that it's gonna sell a lot better if it is, then he would bring it to me. Or if it was something special, like the last miniature that Werner Clock did for us, where we hadn't had a Werner for a very long time, and I used to love to paint Werners, so he passed that one off to me. So it's really a pick and choose these days. I mean, a lot of what I do on the show here, you know, I'll send Ron several of those, so that will be cool. But of course, you guys have already watched me paint it, so it's limited use in instruction as far as that goes. Is that that's a thumb? That's a thumb. Trying to see the jazz hands. Trying to figure out the jazz hands here, guys. There we go. Now we've got some hands. Hands. Hey, Mike, how's it going? Long time no see. Or at least a long time no chat. More of a half fast painter? Yeah. Hey, Lando. Nice to meet you. Yeah, show off is also good. Raid? There was a raid? Did I miss it? Wait. I missed it. I have to go back. Sorry, I've been actually concentrating on what I'm doing here. Gosh forbid. Ah. Let's see here. Ah, I missed it. All right. Who raided us? Help. Oh, Mr. Mike. Okay. Hey there. I missed it. I'm sorry. I'm actually, since I'm starting a new miniature and I'm fielding a bunch of questions, Mike, I totally missed when you came in your raid announcement. Justin must be asleep because he totally didn't say thanks either. He is the disembodied voice. But anyway, so what we're doing today is we're working on Nemesra, Dancing Girl. And originally I was going to do some freehand, but then I looked at her and realized she's a great subject for transparent cloth. So we'll be doing that instead. Oop, I lost my chat. Help. I lost my chat. There we go. Sweet. Yeah, the thing is, Valander, the reason that we ended up doing that in the past is that metal was getting so expensive and we didn't want our miniatures to get terribly expensive. So often the figure would get a base that was like the absolute minimum. And because Reaper figured, well, if it's prone to falling over, you can always glue it onto a plastic base. So some of those, they've gotten a little bit, now you can see this one is, because the old Jade Dancing Girl is like that. She's got a tiny, tiny little base. And lately I see we've been going more toward bigger bases, but it does appreciably increase the cost because tin is so expensive now. So that is why we went that way for a while. Now, here we can see probably her butt, because it's up against there, but really right under that, it goes more toward folds. So we're going to have to ask ourselves, and probably I went too far down here as it is, but I'll at least keep this and this to keep the transparency. Up against there, that's going to be in shadow anyway. All right, so that's about as much transparency, because here whenever you've got a lot of folds and you can't see the shape of the skin underneath, the shape of the leg underneath, you know that it's not going to be, like, you would see it if it was pressed up against the cloth. So you know that this is not going to be painted transparently. No, we never, that's the thing, that's branding though, Valander. Never, ever do we put plastic bases with Dark Heaven. Never. Warlord is the only plastic base line. And Chronos. Does Chronoscape have it? I don't remember. I haven't painted enough Chrono. But that is definitely, like, that's a brand identification factor. You're supposed to only get, you only get a non-integral base, like, in Warlord. You don't get it in Dark Heaven. Because when we started doing the non-integral bases, the plastic bases, a lot of people were just confused about them. Because we come from, like, D&D people who aren't used to, like, having black plastic bases for their models. If they weren't from, like, wargaming, they didn't understand it. So it's a brand ID thing. So we assume that if you want it, you will get it, or you have it. I guess that's what. Now, don't quote me on any of this because, I'm not Ed. But that was my understanding, is that Warlord was the first. Reaper had never done plastic bases up until the Warlord line, guys. So for Reaper, it was odd to go in that direction. We've always gone integral. Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I thought, Muses. I was thinking about it, and I was like, maybe Chrono, because Chrono is more meant to be gameable, I guess. Or there was some thought that it might be gameable at some point. Not certain. But yeah, so Warlord was really a landmark for us. Before that, everything was integral and nobody wanted to do plastic bases. It adds cost. I mean, it adds cost on a different scale than making a metal base bigger, but it definitely still gives you a component part that you have to put in there and factor in the price for. And like I said, then you require people to use glue. So in the old days where Reaper really just wanted you to be able to get a one-piece figure out of a blister and game with it, any additional work was, considered kind of a barrier to that. So yeah, Crazy Cat Lady is awesome. Yeah, we went toward plastic bases after that for specific lines, but not Dark Heaven. It'll be a huge reversal if Dark Heaven ever gets slotted bases, or not slotted bases, plastic bases at all. It'll be very much a huge change, something that Reaper has never done before. I can't see it happening. I think Reaper still wants people to be able to put it on whatever base they want for their game. And they want it to be gameable out of the pack without you having to use glue when possible. Obviously, we do more multi-part figures now also. So this is, if you look at it, this is just the evolution of miniatures, right? Where before everything was very flat and every base was integral and everything was, you were trying to make it in the minimum number of pieces possible. And then over the years, it's become more about multi-part minis for more dynamic poses and plastic bases and stuff like that, but it hasn't always been that way. So right. And we've, Reaper, I think Reaper's latest sculpts have gone to fix that, Valandar. But we probably can't remaster that mold without losing, we'd have to remaster the model to change it. So there are going to be little ones like that it's just not worth going back and redoing a whole new mold set for them. I mean, Kevin is usually our on-staff sculptor is busy enough to without having to go back to an older model and put a wider base on it and then, ask mold making to remaster it. It depends. If it was a really popular miniature and, we sold a ton of them and people complained all the time, then maybe. All right. Then we would have to raise the price, Pendrick. If we added a base to all of Dark Heaven, we'd have to raise the price across the board. And part of what Ed always wants to do is give people an affordable product. Same with Bones. If we added a base, that would actually chunk up those prices too. And also, every additional part you put in makes a labor cost. So it's not only that, it's also the labor cost. Then you have to chunk up the price again. So, yeah. Well, I mean, but you have a base probably, that's why we sell extra bases if you want one. But, it is sad, but it's not like a crisis, I think. For me, as a miniature painter, if I got a mini like that, I would cuss out the miniature company just a bit, and then I would just reach for base. So, thank you for cussing out the miniature company. Because I totally have had those moments with other people's miniatures. All right, so I'm going to just this is how I mix skin tones, guys. This is a course on how Anne does skin. I mix up my main color. I decide if I like it. I put it on the model. Then I transfer with my brush a couple of big, nice, fat brushfuls over, and I drop another drop of pure white in it. Right, exactly, Redcon1. See, that's kind of what I was saying earlier with the whole you can use whatever base you want. If we make an assumption about what base you want, we're going to be wrong 50% of the time. Because, some people want square bases for specific games, and some few probably want hex, and then I just like round ones. I don't care about the game. I know which way my character is facing, right? If facing is even important anymore in some games. So, yeah, so there we go. So 2 big brushfuls, and then I drop a drop of water in after I put a drop. And note that even though I started by putting Creamy Ivory into my main tone, from here I am going up completely with pure white. So, and this is how I do skin tones. Like, invariably, unless I'm doing dark ones, then it's different. If I'm doing a dark, like, African type or Arabic type skin tone, I'm going to be using a lot more yellow in my highlights. But with any middle or fair skin, I'm going to be going up with pure white after my initial mix. Always. There is a reason for this. It is that I find if I highlight with pure white, I never have to deal with chalkiness. Ever. Yeah, I mean, that washer trick's older than time. That's what I was always told too when I started out in the hobby, is use washers for bases if you want weight on them. All right, so we've got our highlight here now. So now we're going to look at kind of up at the light source, and we're going to see where are we going to put our highlight. And we need to also highlight anything that is being see-through. So, hey Jelly, how's it going? Yeah, the only problem with metal washers is that they rub off very easily when you paint them. That's why I always will prefer plastic bases. I find that if the plastic base is wide enough footprint, I don't have a problem knocking over miniatures. All right, so since we're doing see-through here, and this is cloth covered, we do want to highlight it, just like we would highlight anything. I will stop for a moment here and point out that this is one of two ways that I typically will do transparent cloth. The other way you can do it is to paint it with your color first, your cloth color, and then do highlight with skin tones. However, I find that this does not work as well. For one thing, when you're trying to mix a skin tone into a blue color, like Shark Bite has a lot of blue in it, because they're complementary, it goes gray. It actually doesn't give you a good read on that skin tone. And so I find that I get a lot better results with transparent cloth if I start with the skin tone and highlight and shade it. Oh yeah, if you spray those with black primer, they're probably fine. Right, Scrying Eye? Whatever you want to do, guys. I personally like the fancy base. I like the round-lipped, I like this. This is a Reaper 74023. It is a beautiful, shiny, round-lipped base with a slight inset so that I can easily put basing materials in there and still have the black lip to show it off. That is my favorite base. Yay, Reaper, for finally making round-lipped bases. All right. So you guys can see how much highlight that gives me. And that's about the amount of difference I want between layers also. So this is really not only a transparent cloth class on this model, but it's also an How Anne Builds Skin Tones class. Hey, DM. Yo, happy Monday. It was in the 40s here this morning. 42, I think, when I took Kiri out. So it'll get probably pretty nice today because we had 2 days of rain and now it's sunny again. I really enjoyed the rainy days. It was the first real rainy days we've had since I moved here. Back in April. All right, so essentially wherever the light's falling, which is going to be on the upper part of the thigh here because it sticks out a little bit, having your base coat around so that you can kind of adjust it and blend it is nice. You notice that my highlight color is not terrifically different than this color is. Like, they are very similar, actually. And what that lets me do is it lets me keep this color thicker. I don't have to thin it as much, and I don't have to sweat my blends as much because they're so close together that they're going to blend pretty effortlessly. Like, you're really not going to see brush strokes. So let's get this midriff going on. And now is when I'm going to be able to start judging if my shadow is dark enough. Snow, wow. Oh no, Kurnico. That's terrible. Yeah, Kiri is stuffed up today, so I'm expecting an explosion later. She's asleep now, but we are not safe. We are not safe. I expect she'll wait for a really inconvenient time, like when I'm at the grocery store and David has to deal with it. I'm certain. So we gotta get the belly here. The navel there. Can take this up a bit. Also, if we're going to make this a very pale skin tone, we need to start covering a lot of the area with this lighter skin color. And only leave our base coat in the darkest areas. The more area that we cover with our first highlight. Oh, yeah, Val. I mean, that's how you get blends. So you have two choices. I said this, I think, before on a stream. But you have two choices. You can either go with your main color and make your first highlight really different, in which case you're going to have to do numerous layers of this color and really have them thin in order to build up transitions. Or you can keep your paint a little thicker by not making them so different. And then you're still going to do more transitions, but you're going to be able to keep your paint thicker and not mess with really thin paint if you are not familiar with that yet. Yeah, with green skin, Sir Hoggle, I would probably go up with a bit of yellow also. Because yellow is a natural kind of highlighter for green skin. Otherwise, it's going to go minty. So you got to ask yourself what kind of light you're looking at. So it's like most sunlight is slightly golden, and on skin, I could go up with some yellow here, but I'm going to keep it simple because I'm doing the transparent cloth thing. So I did already add in a little bit of yellow with my creamy ivory and went a bit more golden. But yeah, with skin that's green, I would go up with a little bit of yellow and then go white, just to keep it from getting minty. And with blue, I would go up with white. With purple, I would go up probably with a pink and then a white. Stuff like that. Usually highlights are warmer than shadows. So that's why you would choose like a warm color like a yellow or a pink that's warmer than the purple to raise your highlights up, because that's what the eye typically expects the highlights to be a little bit warmer than the shadows. But yeah, after a certain point, you can totally just use pure white. All right, let's get the décolletage blocked in. And again, I'm not going to worry too much about blending here because my colors are similar enough. Also, the smaller an area that you're doing, guys, the smaller an area that you're painting, the less you have to worry about blends. Putting just a spot highlight and a spot shadow is probably going to be enough on a very small area to make it look blended. Did olive and white and olive orc. Yeah, exactly. You need some yellow, right. And that's because not olives are created equal. Unless it's an extremely yellowy olive, it will gray out because olive is made by mixing yellow and black. Sometimes with some green added, but depends on the olive. And so that's why it went gray on you. I think Lord of the Rings cemented the concept of the teal or the greenish ghost, although they were a thing earlier. Very much a thing. I think it's because the old phosphorescent paints, phosphorescent glow-in-the-dark powder was green. That's why I think, Pendrake. But the glaze took away from your highlights and shadows. Yes, but then essentially you just pop in your highest highlight and your lowest shadow again. And you shouldn't have to do too much, because you only really have to worry about your highest and your lowest usually after you glaze. Either that or your glaze was really strong, in which case you maybe wanted to back off from the glaze a little bit. Though yellow can be a very strong, very, very strong glaze. You have to be really careful with it. Yeah, Peter Jackson was my first guess, but then I realized that glow-in-the-dark powder has always been green, so when you have ghostly things as far as toys, they've always been green too. I personally like a pale blue, although I used a teal with the Banshee. And, Ghostbusters, for that matter, the Slimer was green. So, I gotta think that green ghosts have been in our psyches a lot longer, if they were already cemented in the 80s. So now you can see how I'm doing my shadows and using the highlights to try to bring out details of muscle mass here. Yep. Yeah, we think alike. Yeah, Scooby-Doo, good point, Redcon. So then you're moving back to, the 70s. We could probably find out, the earliest iteration of green ghosts if we went looking. And you could blame everything from that. All right, so I'm layering up a couple layers of this lighter color. But yeah, it's easier, I find, if you're gonna highlight green, just go. Essentially, what I would do instead of putting 2 drops of white or 1 drop of white is I would put a little smear of white and a little smear of yellow and work those in. I would put both. So when I'm working up with more golden skin tones, instead of adding like 2 drops of white to my initial skin mixture to go up, I'll add a drop of, say, lemon yellow plus white. You guys would see me do this, probably saw me do this when we were working on like some of our darker skin miniatures. Like Zari here, her highlights are built by adding in, I think, lemon yellow and white on her skin. Because it makes sense, like dark skin usually highlights golden, and so you know you need to go yellow, but you also need to go lighter, so you also do the white. Okay, so I'm going to cover a lot of the skin area, as I mentioned. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to line around this to give me a frame of reference. Because it's hard to tell like what your highlights really look like when you're looking at them next to white primer. If you're the type to base coat your entire model, then you're good. So okay, so let's talk about rib cage. So I'm going to turn this. I see that my highlight is really just right here. I've got a shadow from under here, so I'm going to highlight there. So whenever you're highlighting cloth, just try to kind of look at your model in the light and figure out where your highlight should go for that rib cage. And work it that way. And you don't need to be real, like, don't sweat it too much, but do get close to where you think it would really be highlighting. And because I did thin this paint, it's like maybe 2 to 1. It's not nearly thin enough for like real layering, but because these colors are so close together, I can get away with it. But I can still, since it's thinned, I can still build up like 2 layers of it to make it a little bit more highlighted. Have fun, Graphic Gem. Sorry we weren't working on something more finished today for you. I started a lot of new models this last week, so everybody will slowly get more finished as the weeks go on. Although Rock Troll that we'll be working on tomorrow is very close to done. So now I'm getting to the point where when I put an extra layer of this highlight color on, I'm noticing that it's not really doing anything. So I'm going to finish highlighting this area up here. You can see the difference though, right? See how much darker this area looks and how much lighter this area looks because I'm covering a lot of the area with this highlight, which if you think about it is actually my midtone because the base coat that we put on is actually our shadow. But yes, thanks for tuning in, Graphic Gem. I hope to see you again. All right, she's got a gem hanging down over her forehead. I'm going to ignore it for now and just concentrate on getting the forehead highlighted. You want to get and we may need more shadows here. We'll figure it out. Her side of her face over here is kind of hidden by her arm, so I have to keep an eye on it. I'm probably still going to highlight the cheekbone, but just right up near the nose. A lot of the face is going to be in shadow under that arm. And we may actually accentuate that in a bit. We'll find out. We'll figure it out. But yeah, when you're doing a colored skin tone, don't think too hard about it being skin. And just say, what would I highlight this color with if I was highlighting it, for a cloak or something? And go that way. The way to make a colored skin look like skin is to add rosiness to the skin where blood flow would be close to the surface, just like you would on a human figure, where you would add like maybe a bit of pink around the nose or the earlobes, or places where we have pinker skin, the blush area, things like that. That's the way you make your unnatural skin tone look more natural. It's why so many people, when you see them paint goblins, will give them some rosiness to their lips and their earlobes and their noses. They'll go like, and it's even what I did with Rock Troll, which you'll see tomorrow because I can't reach him right now. But he's got more of an orangey color on his nose and areas that would have blood flow. Like for the show DM or for in general, the greater world. Right now, I'd have to count my 3 commission figures that are almost done. Right now for the show, I have 6. I think I'm trying for 6 different models. I mean, not counting things like Gemstone Dragon. My current rotation for the show is 6 models. And then as a figure gets finished, we'll toss in a new one. But yeah, like I said, technically 7 if you include Gemstone Dragon, and 8 if you include Fire Giant King, but I don't know that I'm going to finish Fire Giant King, so he's kind of like been kicked out of the rotation for right now. So Gemstone Dragon, though, I do want to finish. So I would count Gemstone Dragon and say for the show 7. I just want to get Gemstone Dragon back into the rotation when Bones is close to shipping. Is that a finger? Is that a finger? Is that a finger? Wow, it's hard to tell with this hand. Okay, this one has 4 fingers. So, Bobby, you've got to have another finger back here somewhere. Maybe there's a finger there that I'm missing. But it seems like she's missing a finger. Oh, nose. That's what you hate it. When you wake up and you're missing a finger, it's the worst thing. As far as... actually, for Patreon, I tend to go here and there, scooting around different projects. So, like, technically, I'm going to use Spirit Beast, or I used Spirit Beast for the $2 video this month for leopard spots. So you could include Spirit Beast in that. I would include the 3 models that I just finished, or almost finished for Dark Sword. They still need grass, so you know there's a bunch. And if you count, like, our D&D figures for our D&D stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays, like, Zari's not done yet, and we just are starting Xandros now. So he'll start getting paint on him. So there's 2 for the D&D stream. And I probably am always going to have at least 1 commission figure, 1 or 2. I would say 2 commission figures going at a time. So D&D figures, commission figures... whatever figure I'm utilizing for Patreon, although I don't always count those if I'm just using them for a one-shot to demonstrate. I've got 3 busts laid out right now. 2 that I'm close to starting, and 1 that I have in progress.
I am back, Miss Anne.
Hello.
Sorry, I had a meeting with Ed and Dave.
Oh, that's cool. We had a raid that I didn't see, but I did. The chat alerted me to it, so then I was able to say thank you.
Thank you, chat. You guys are the best.
Yes, chat is the best. He has a convenient excuse for the Patreon shout out. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I'm actually, and I'm behind on content this month, so I need to get you guys stuff. Be getting you guys stuff this week. At least 2 things. The first, probably the $2 and the $5 tier. Just need to, get her done, because I was so behind on these commissions that I had to devote a fair chunk of time to them. And as is always the case with Tom Meyer sculpts, those Targaryen models that I just am wrapping up for Jim are very time intensive, much more time intensive than they look like they would be. His sculpts are always deceptively simple, but then there's so much fine detail to them. And yes, my Patreon, for those who are not yet on it, who would like to join, is patreon.com/paintingbig. Sorry, getting in focus a little higher here, guys. Yeah, I do a lot of stuff on the paint line, and a lot of stuff on just general stuff. Like I said, where I have leopard spots this month, and we're going to have a PDF on the Brindwind colors, or the first 6 of them anyway. I think she's got like a finger cross. Yeah, she does have crossed fingers here. So that's the other finger. She kind of has her first 2 fingers crossed here on this hand. I was like, wait, where's the finger? And then we got to go around to the back. I need a more solid base coat there. Yeah, I know, Val. Everybody's really behind on everything. That's why I'm not too bad. I just feel bad when I don't hit my deliverables. That, and I'm really trying to get a lot of stuff done so that I can take a bit of time off between Christmas and New Year's, be able to at least take Christmas Eve and Christmas off, and take New Year's Eve and New Year's off. So I've got a lot of work lined up for myself this month, just trying to finish out some projects that have been pending. Never let it be said that when you are freelance, it's just, all sitting at home playing computer games all day. It's totally not it. It does not work very well if you try to do that. All right, there we go. Wanted to put a second coat of base on there just to make sure I had a really solid base to start with. Yeah, I just saw that, Valendar. What? Eating small, solid food? Hey, it's diet time, Justin.
Yeah, I actually meant to tell you that I've lost 8 pounds.
Wow.
Since Tuesday.
Hey, wisdom teeth and weight loss program. I'm gonna get brown liner out today. Not that you'd want to lose weight that way, but
I'm not opposed.
Yes. Justin's wisdom teeth were very, very difficult, guys. So he definitely had a rough time in there.
Yeah, I wish the experience were more positive. Unfortunately, it's been kind of rough. It's still like a 3 or 4 on the pain scale. That's
really?
just always there. It won't go away.
Wow. Yeah. I remember mine being painful. Yeah. I remember mine being painful for at least 5 days, but I don't know beyond that. Mine may not have been as bad. I mean, they did have to explode mine to take them out in fragments because they're coming in sideways, but I don't know how mine compared to yours as far as it goes, right? All right, let's get some highlights on this back here, and then we're going to line it.
Yeah, I've basically accepted that I'm just going to be eating Advil from now until whenever.
You should be more than good enough by Christmas. You can
God, I hope so.
You can have a decadent Christmas holiday to make up for all of this, and then you can gain all your weight back.
You know, I actually, since I have that ski trip in early February,
yeah,
I really, really need to use this, to your point, as a kickstart to lose weight.
Yeah. I mean, if you've already lost 8, you should definitely take advantage of that and redesign your diet. You're having to redesign your diet anyway, right? So
I am. Yeah, you're completely correct.
Then that makes sense to me. You can do it. All right. Yeah, these little fingers crossed over each other things are pretty difficult. That's kind of why I got the liner out. Yeah. Yeah, med stuff is never fun. It's never fun. Plus, I was going through the wisdom teeth getting taken out at the same time I was doing other surgeries. So it was like just an additional insult to injury, really. On the other side, I gotta say, guys, once you've gone through lots of, like, you know, health conditions and, like, real surgeries, going to the dentist no longer has any fear for you. You're just like, do your worst. Like, I used to be scared of the dentist. After I had, like, real surgery, it was like dentist was nothing. All right, so we're gonna line. I'm gonna be sneaky, though. So what I'm not going to line, guys, is I'm not going to line areas, and I have to think about this a little bit here. So I have to ask myself if the cloth here is going to be similar to the cloth that's transparent. And if I'm going to have these cloth bits look like they're all kind of integrated with each other, then I'm not going to line between them. I think I'm actually going to use like a dark, like shark bite plus a little bit of something to do the lining there so that I'm differentiating. Because I might make this belt a little see-through. I might decide to do that. And so if I go that route, then I need to, yeah, maybe I will paint that over. I don't want to separate them too much, essentially. If it's all transparent cloth, then we don't want to separate it too much. So how about we go a little bit transparent here. I'm just going to block in a little skin tone just inside it in case I decide to do that. It's going to be really easy to paint over it if I decide not to make it transparent after all. And there's a lot of folds here, so you're not going to see much skin tone coming through on some of these areas. So it's really kind of a question there, how much. A lot of this fold stuff is going to disrupt any skin tone that you may want to show. But the belt is tight across her hips in most areas, so we can think about it. We'll at least block it in a little bit with our base coat color. Oh yeah, Redcon, I bet. Yeah, well, the military, they're just like, yeah, you're a replaceable resource. All right, I'm going to do the small of the back with a little of a highlight, but the upper part of the torso back here is going to be in shadow. You can even see that it's in shadow from the way the light is falling on the miniature. So that means don't put a highlight up here. Keep it in shadow. Just paint the bottom part here, right above her butt, with the highlight. And keep your shadow. See it? Up here, I'm highlighting the shoulder blades and not highlighting the space between them for the same reason. I can see the shadow when I shine the light on it, so I'm not going to take advantage of that. I do see a bit of roughness in my sculpt here that I totally did not take off. I think I may do a scrape and replace. Hold on. This is fraught with peril. Do not try this at home, kids. But my paint, as you can see, my paint layers are really thin. There's just a little bit of roughness there that I don't like. So I'm going to take it off. Grab my primer. One advantage of working with such thin paint as I do is that if you do the scrape off paint in the middle of a paint job, it is relatively easy not to have a scar. Because your paint is so dang thin that you don't have to worry about it like being a divot in the paint job, like if you use a lot thicker paint. So I'll get my primer. I always like showing you guys how to fix stuff like this. If you have a rough area that you didn't address, you can see the metal that I scraped off, scraped down to. Now I'm going to use my primer. Kind of going to put a dab in there. Rinse out my brush. Here, let's get in real close. And then I'm going to take my damp brush and kind of feather the primer edges out to blend them in to the area around it. This will create, we'll make sure that the primer is not like a blob that shows up on your paint job, because you can blend it in and not have blobulous results. But it will still be thick enough to fill in that gap in the paint. So pro tips for sure right there, guys. I have no fear. I have no fear of taking a knife to any figure at any stage of completion. I know I can always overcome it. I mean, the primer is thick enough that you can utilize it. And once that's dry, then I'll take another layer and brush it over the whole thing to judge how smooth I got. And the answer is really smooth, actually. I don't see any texture. So then I go back in with my base coat after that's dry. And I don't mind if my base coat's a little thick, because that's going to help fill in any imperfections I may have missed. Do make sure that it's dry before you do this, though. If you rip up paint, then you've got a problem. There. And now look at how much smoother it looks, guys. And all I had to do was gouge it with a knife. Don't try this at home, Kiri. Kiri says, I'm thinking about having a poop explosion. It's only 20 minutes till the stream is over. Now would be a great time. It would totally disrupt Mom. And now we can come back in with our highlight. All fixed. So blocking in some highlights. And then, like I said, everything is always relative. So right now you're looking at it and you're like, well, I can't really tell how light my highlight is or how dark. Like, it looks light, but is it light enough? You know, how's it really going to look? So because we've got all this white primer here, it's making the skin look darker than it actually is. And the way to kind of counter that so that you can get an objective look at how your skin really looks is to do lining. I always encourage everybody to learn to do lining. You can always, slideshow. Yeah, right after this, I was about to say Redcon. And I don't use black ever. I use Reaper's brown liner usually. If I need a heavy, solid, cartoony line, I will go with walnut brown from Reaper and thin it. But the liners are nice because if I thin them more, I can get a nice transparent line that's still solid, like that. The more water you add to the liners, they actually hold together really well under thinning. So you can get a pretty subtle, natural line if you want one. I don't necessarily, because she's so fair, I don't want the line to be super dark or it's going to be very cartoony. So I use brown liner. When I'm doing something fair and fine like this, I'll almost always use brown liner instead of walnut. All right, just let me make sure I got all my highlights down on here. And especially you want to line the places like where these fingers are overlapping, where you really can't tell. So yeah, to judge how light or dark my skin actually is, I will line. I just want to make sure I've got at least a highlight on for these hands. There we go. All right, I think we've got pretty good highlights on a lot of her. Oh, Kiri's got a moment. I knew it. I knew it. If I invoked it, the dog would go. All right, guys. Kiri emergency. Be right back. Justin, take over. You're going to be kind of echoey, though, because my mic isn't working.
Oh, okay.
Or my headphone jack isn't working. So, Kiri emergency. Be right back, guys. Poor doglet. Come on, doglet. Let's go outside. And I'll go to the be right back screen.
How's everyone doing? Yeah, I'm glad they didn't have to cut mine out, to be honest. Val. A sideshow. That would be great, Quindy. Speaking of which, how's Buglips's wisdom teeth since he had them removed? Oh yeah, it was very. It was an oral surgeon. Sorry, Dragon. Yeah, it was. It was an oral surgeon who removed my teeth, but um, it's like I said, it's been kind of. I will say that maybe my current pain has been because I've tried to eat solid food too soon, so I've kind of reeled it all back, and okay, cool. So I'm glad to hear that even Bug Lips at this point is still not quite back on solid foods, and he's headed out for how long now? Because I've been trying to eat solid foods roughly 4 days after my surgery, which might be a bit too soon. So I'm still back on like soups again, and that might be the cause of why I'm experiencing more pain now. To be honest, definitely don't rush it. Okay. I'll just be honest, guys. I'm really tired of I'm just really tired of the the soups and the puddings and the all the crap. Oh, I haven't even actually had any in Syria yet. Scrying Eye. I could probably get some of that to change it up. You'd think actually, Achilles, that at this point, kind of because of where I'm at, you'd think I would have painted something by now, but I have not. Um, Mini painting for me, when I've done it, has always been it's kind of a for me, it's a big reset button on like hobbies and stuff where if I'm looking for something that is utterly, utterly relaxing and almost zen inducing, like that's really what mini painting is to me. I just know it's kind of a secret weapon. I don't do it very often, but when I do it, it's typically because I need a big reset. So it is, I can understand Achilles why and how you used it when you did, because it can be a very powerful tool. Um, and super kudos too, Yeah, my grandpa actually drinks Ensure semi regularly, I think. But he also drinks beer all day every day without fail. Um and he's like 85, I think, at this point. I think at this point is his diet consists of Folgers coffee, natural light beer, and then probably Ensure. Those are the three liquids he consumes 98% of the time. He's very old fashioned. Yeah, he's been doing that for, geez, for as long as I've been alive and then plus some. So I would say he's been doing it for 30 plus years.
It's just not a regular streaming week if we don't have a cure emergency. Hey, everybody. We're discussing drinks. Drinks. Good deal. Ah! And I'm also falling over. There we go. Let's get very close. Here we go. So you guys can see the highlights. It actually is far more apparent the more. See how. So we're bringing up a lot of highlights on the skin. We want the skin to actually go a lot lighter. So, yep. Sorry, guys. There was definitely definitely Kiri having issues. 1 second. Hey, Doglet. How about we settle down? There we go. Sorry, Doglet interruptions today. Right and left. Left and right, all over. Let's get back to lining, because I think we're actually at the point where I've got the highlights where I want them. The only thing I haven't done is the butt. But I mean, a lot of that, you can see it's mostly in shadow. And I'm really not convinced that any of this is going to stay skin colored. So at the most, I'd put something up right under, like something right here. So I'll put a highlight like right underneath this band. And I suppose that if I'm going to make this skin colored up here, this also needs it. So probably about like that. Just about where her butt would be. Scary. All right, John. All right, cool. Just making sure you guys are just talking about silly stuff and not painting. Oh, I missed a mold line. Don't you hate it when you do that, when you miss a mold line? All right, so I'm just making sure I've got these highlighted. All right, let's line. Let's get some lining in here. I can go a little long because I had a Kiri disruption. We'll line the front. So again, anywhere I think that I might have cloth kind of going together, like if I decide that this cloth is this, is also see-through, I'm not going to really line with the brown. I think I'm going to wait and maybe line with the teal. That's the color of the cloth, because it's a fairly dark teal if we go with shark bite. And if we went with something like squid ink, which you can see the color there is a very dark purple, that's pretty much a liner straight out the gate. Like, you could probably use squid ink as a purple liner, guys. Like a really nice rich purple liner. So if you've been looking for a more saturated purple liner, squid ink could be your baby. So I can get a really fine line here. I mean, you can see my finger in the frame, so you see how tiny that line is. Another place I'm not probably going to line. This is a hard call here. I think I'm going to line on the bottom of this, but not the top. I may decide to switch this up depending on my results. But right now I think I just want a solid dark line between the skin, everywhere the skin really meets the cloth. Sharkbite, yeah, is I think my favorite paint of the Brinewind set. If you go back to the front of this stream after it's up on YouTube or as a VOD, you will see that I pick out like 4 paints from the Brinewind set that I consider kind of MVP. If you are on my Patreon, you will be able to read about it very shortly. This is Patreon week this week. A bunch of Patreon stuff done. So there's a little hanging jewel here that I wanted to kind of line separately. There we go. Or you could just replace the paints you really think you'll use from it, Achilles, at a lot less cost. If they're curdled, then I wonder if they were frozen at some point. Curdled is a word I would only use for a certain effect. If they're dried out, that's one thing. Or if they've turned into kind of latex plugs. But curdling typically only happens when the paint has been forced out of solution through freezing. And by curdling, I mean it looks like kind of cottage cheese forming in your paint. So if I were you and I had experienced that, I would probably just replace the colors that I was very fond of, or that I wanted to use that I saw like some of my favorite painters using, and rebuild that way. It's a lot less cost in the short run, and you can kind of cherry pick. All right, so I kind of got a little bit of skin over the top of that. It's a very, very fine line. Just kind of trying to neaten it up. Since I have my skin colors right here, if I do screw up a little bit in my lining, I can fine tune it there. All right, let's line around. Also, another thing this is going to do for us guys is that when it comes to, if I only line where the cloth actually meets the skin and I don't line any of this, This is going to reinforce the idea that this is all one, this is all one piece here. So if I only line, if I don't do any dark brown lining here and here, then it's going to reinforce the idea that this is all one thing, which I want. But yeah, core set is very expensive. There's a lot of paint in it. But, I mean, we all have, like, favorites and go-tos and stuff. So, if I were you, I would cherry pick and spread out the expense. You may still end up getting all the paints if you find uses for all of them. But you won't have to invest as much up front. So that got a little blobulous because I had a little bit too much paint on my brush. So I'm going to grab some of my skin tone, which is why you do this when you still have like your base and your first highlight skin tone open. So you can thin that line. It's much easier to put down a relatively heavy line and then just take your skin tone and come back and thin it by pushing up against it than it is to try to draw an ultra thin line out the gate. So if you aren't real good with your brush control out the gate, that is one way you can kind of correct if you get a little blobulous. I'm not sure blobulous is actually a word. David might call me out on this one, but Dr. Seuss gives me permission to make up any word I want. Blobulous, yes. Yeah, I am using my bigger brush here. So what I should probably do, guys, since I'm working with really thin paint and I'm trying to get small amounts, is this is when I would switch off of my big brush, because it was my big brush that gave me that blobulous moment. So instead, I would go to one of my smaller brushes, either the DaVinci Maestro 1 or the DaVinci Maestro Triple Lot. And I probably would go to the Triple Lot for this, because there's a lot of water in this paint. And I'm doing little bits and pieces as I go. So having to reload using a tiny brush, tiny brush, these are my two options. And I'll probably go for the tinier one. Suru, the big difference between Reaper and Vallejo is the base consistency. Reaper is going to be a lot more fluid. It's going to take a lot less thinning to get it to the point where you can do finer effects with it, or layered effects, or stuff like that, or blending. It's not going to be as thick just out the gate. You are going to notice more transparency, which means it may take two coats to get a really nice solid base coat, as it did with me on this particular model when I was laying down the skin. But it also is going to make for very good washes and glazes. So it's like every paint line has strengths and weaknesses. And with Reaper, I really wanted it to be easy to thin and to stay in solution. You're going to notice that too, is that if you do thin your Vallejo paints, you'll notice that there is a certain amount of separation that happens if you throw a lot of water at them. That does not happen with Reaper paint because of the base. So it really depends on your painting style. If your painting style is like firmly in thick paint camp, you may find it that you end up liking like Scale 75 or Vallejo. But if you like to thin, if you like to get some of those glazes and like you like to work with thin layers like I do, then Master Series is going to work with your style better, I think. Also, if you use a wet palette, be aware that because the paint has a more liquid consistency out the gate, it's not as ideal for a wet palette. There's a reason I use it in a well. I also have used it on a wet palette, but what I find is just that the water wicking up will mean that it thins it like quite a bit faster than a thicker paint. So those are your main differences. And from then on, I would recommend, if you buy no other color for Reaper, buy pure white, 9039. Super highly pigmented white can be thinned to within an inch of its life without separating. It's the cat's meow. It's the color. Buy that and play with it. Very indicative also of just the line in general. Time to run, Scrying Eye. Yes, see you. I'm going to go a little late because I lost some time for Kiri there. So what I'm doing, guys, is I'm putting a pretty heavy shadow down in here with her hair just because as you can see, like when you can see the shadow is there, just go ahead and block it in. You aren't going to want a super highlight there, so it doesn't make sense to preserve it. I did get a little blurfy right there because I got a little too over enthusiastic. Alrighty. Yeah, if you do thin Vallejo a lot and it tends to separate on you when you get it to where you want it, yeah, you're probably going to really like Master Series. That's my painting style is a lot of thin layers, and since I created the paint line, that's the way I went. It also, I found that it's a rarity in the industry right now for paint line to go that way. I don't know of any paint other than Master Series that is formulated this way. Everybody else seems to be going for really higher coverage out the gate, and that will impinge upon how well your paint can thin, how effectively it works when it is thinned. It's just the way the paint chemistry works. It's all down to the type of base that you're using then, and that is going to affect everything. And yeah, so, I mean, I appreciate that other lines are putting out, like, something that covers, but I don't think coverage is everything. It's good for some techniques, and it's not good for others. So, all right, so we're getting that. But yeah, and if you're not stuck on any style yet, then I would say definitely give MSP a try. Give everything a try. When you're learning, you should try a whole bunch of different palettes, different brushes, different paint lines. And then, you know, also try to paint like various people, like watch different streamers paint. We all do it a little bit different, right? We all talk about it a little differently. We'll give you different tips. You'll get different, different tips from each of us as far as what we focus on. And so that will also like help you just adding a bunch of tools to your toolbox across the board. And then you're going to figure out slowly what you really enjoy about the hobby. And that's going to help just define your style. Do these little bracelets. So again, working with a small brush and a liner paint, which flows more evenly, just the way that the liners are formulated. They're like just meant to make these really fine lines because of the fluidity of the base. Let's see here, headband, jewelry, and I'll just stop and line around whatever at this point often. Primarily I want to get like between the skin and things, but I will definitely get distracted because lining is relaxing and I'll just kind of go in and get in my zen zone. But mostly we want to line around the skin because we want a frame of reference. Oh, sorry. I'm zoomed in so close it's so easy to get off camera. I'll probably zoom out a bit. But you guys can see how thin the paint is here. Let me do the fingers actually while I'm close enough. So here I might actually thin my paint even more. Let me show you guys how thin it is. So that's where it is now, the liner. But I might get it around there. And let me pull that out. So like that. Hey, Reaper John. I think they're in regular, aren't they in regular release? Aren't the, aren't these, weren't these like put into bones? Like they have bones numbers. Am I wrong on that? Haven't been keeping up with it. But Reaper John is here and he'll tell us. So okay, thin this down a little bit more. Make sure there's so little on your brush because you really don't want this to blurf. Get up there. You want a line between these fingers. And because your paint is so pale, guys, and this is where like having a paint that is a skin tone that's so pale works for you, you can thin that liner down to where it's actually a really natural shadow and it isn't garish, and get that finger in there. Not yet. January or February. Yeah, so there you go. Hey, John David. Yeah, well, John says they will be released, so don't worry, guys, if you missed it. All right, I'm going to go and zoom out a little so that's easier for me to stay on camera. There we are. Otherwise, it's way too easy to get off. And then you guys don't see what I'm doing. Not that lining is particularly, you know, elucidating at close range, but... So, since I'm using a smaller brush, I am going to have to reload it more often. Like, the paint is going to dry in it a little bit faster. Because this paint is thinned so much, I can get away with it. But I do need to reload a lot more. You only want to use really small brushes with paint that's thinned quite a bit. In my experience, that's when they shine. Otherwise, you tend to get frustrated. We do want to put a shadow in between her face and her arm there, so I did kind of carry that shadow up there. Peppermint white is, yeah, it's, I use it for that fair skin recipe I gave you guys a couple weeks ago. And if you're on the Patreon and you look at that color, the holiday set PDF, it'll tell you, it'll give you that recipe. So now her eyes are very small, so I am going to actually line them. This is where if you want to artificially enlarge an eye, you can do so. Essentially, you just have to paint it a little bit wider than it actually is. So for me, I don't want a really tiny eye. It's really hard to paint them. Even though she's kind of like, you know, got the half-lidded look and everything, exotic and all, I still want to be able to paint the eyes. So I will often enlarge them just a little bit here in this stage. This is really the time if you're going to do it. If you're going to enlarge the eye, you need to do it now. She's got these little like poofy fish lips, puffer fish lips. So I need to figure out the mouth, and I do that when I line also. And that's where you can give her expression. Notice that that is what gives her expression. It's when you line the mouth that you can suggest that little upturn at the corner of the mouth to give her a smile, or leave it more downturned to give her more of a mysterious look. So don't forget to line your mouths, guys. This is important. If you want an expressive face, you've gotta. Gonna line this little stone. There. Fish lips, right? Well, I widened, that's the other thing I did though, is I really made sure that I pulled the line of her mouth out so it wasn't just this little poofy lips. Because she looked like she had just this tiny little pouty lip set. And I wanted more of a smile on the face. So, alright, not going to line down here again because we want that, but I do need to line up here. I think I might give her black hair. Alright, so we're not going to line anywhere in here because we want this all to look like it's one piece, as it undoubtedly is. So we're not going to line between the sections of it. We are going to line, but I should say, we will line, but we'll line with a different color. We'll line with the shadow of the cloth color that we're using. So there, and we can line back here because we don't have that drape. Ah, oh no, we went too far. I lost track of where the drape is. The drape is here, I think. I think it goes up like that. The mold didn't catch it very well on the back side, so I'm going to have to extrapolate. So now I'm going to have to take that line out where I put it in. No more line. So taking my skin tone and I'm getting that out of there. Doesn't matter if my skin tone goes up over the band here. It's not a big deal. So now I've got to watch that on the other side too, although it's a little bit more compressed on the other side because her waist is tilting. But I am going to keep that in mind. I can kind of see where it comes around right here. There. We'll make it meet kind of like that. So I'm almost freehanding at that point because this didn't carry very well back here. And I need to make sure that take out that line as well then. And if I just stop and spend a minute to knock out this line now, that's just one less thing to do down the road. There. Perfect. Oh, I see what you mean. Just to bring out details, Pendrake? The challenge would be finding a base that would be thin enough, but still hold the pigment in suspension. You'd probably want to do it in a lacquer base. I don't know. I mean, you might be able to use... If I was going to try to do that, if I felt like it would sell... I mean, it would be useful for bones, maybe. I know how I'd do it if I had Reaper's Paint Lab. I know the types of bases I would try. But yeah, the challenge is to... Because the minute you add too much water to get that fluid consistency, you lose... Like, the pigment will separate. So you have to use a thinner base out the gate that'll hold the pigment in suspension. Unfortunately, brown liner base is a black. It's a black base, Pendrake, so no, can't do that. There is a similar base that is clear, but it is different chemically. So I think primer shader might be a better term for it, because that's kind of what you're doing as or detail enhancer. Bones detail enhancer. There we go. Because, yeah, you need to have a name that really reflects what you're trying to do. And what you're trying to do is, presumably, to bring out the details on the bones and lay down a starting coat. But I think it might be dangerous to call it a liner or a primer if it doesn't have the capacity to prime metal models as well, which means it would have to be an actual primer. So I think I would call it a shader or something instead of a primer, so it wouldn't confuse people on the market. Unless we called it a bones primer, but then people are still probably going to get confused if they don't know what bones is. I don't know. I always tried to find names for things that would make things really clear. But it's no longer my option. It would be a Sadie thing at this point. Sadie would have to figure it out. Yeah, exactly. You've got it, Suru. Like, that's why I tend to do it at this point. I don't want to finish out the skin and then be lining around it. It's much easier to do my skin and then line, because like you say, I've only done like the base coat and one highlight, right? So it's really easy to fix it and to go over it at this point. And since none of the rest of the model is painted, if I blorf onto my primer, I've just blorfed onto an area I'm going to paint over anyway. So yeah, it takes a lot of stress out of it if you're a new painter. And lining is like the #1 way to increase your brush control faster. Like, doing a lot of lining will absolutely increase your brush control. So I like to take the fear out of it for people, because it's like, if you're afraid of messing it up, the time to do it is like, yeah, base coat, one highlight, and then line. And then, like I say, it'll give you a better idea of how light or dark everything is, because when you only have the white primer, or for that matter, the black primer next to it, next to black primer, everything you put down is going to look lighter than it is. Next to white primer, everything you put down is going to look darker than it actually is. So when you're like me and you don't base coat everything, I tend to paint in sections all the time. It's just what I find the most rewarding, so it's now part of my style. But yeah, so when you're doing it like this makes a lot of sense, both to give you a relative assessment, because before the skin tone looked pretty dark next to the white all there, but look at how pale it's starting to look when we put in that dark line. Do you see it? Like the difference? It's got the same highlights on it, but it looks a lot more pale now that you've got this dark line in to kind of a relative assessment next to it brings in some dark next to the white and makes you better able to see it. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. that's yeah, Socrates. Well, I don't look that great dancing either, so you know, very few people look as great as the idealized body forms of that we see in our media, including our miniatures. Let's see here. So I'm going to get under the arm here because, again, I want to line everything where the cloth meets the skin directly. That's looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. I'm not going to line anything down here yet because I don't know if I want these the sashes and the drapes and the little, you know, the things coming down off of her belt. I'm not sure if those are going to be the same color, if they're going to be different, if they're going to be a different cloth. So I'm just going to err on the side of caution there and not line with my brown liner in case I want to line it with my shadow for my cloth instead. Now here, I do need a line down in here, and this is where I'll kind of blorf it in. Like, I'll just kind of put in a layer like that, and then I'm going to take some water right away and just kind of blend it in a little to minimize my blorfage. Blorfage, another new word for you. Today is New Word Day. Globulous blorfage. Those are totally words that can be used together. All right, so there we go. So, and I didn't mind having that heavier shadow there because there is going to be a heavier shadow there. The cloth is dropping over the hip. It's turned away from the light. It's going to have a heavier shadow. So you can get away with just blocking it in dark. You don't need to worry about painting it all fancy later. You just want a shadow in there. So you can even carry that shadow down a little bit if you want, although I wouldn't go too far down. That may have been a little bit far. But you see how transparent the liner gets when you thin it down. Bye, Shadow Raven. You want Dad Bod Hero Minis, tell Ron. Ron is the person who designs or buys all of Reaper's minis. So tell Ron, and if he doesn't listen and doesn't give you Dad Bod minis, then you should tell Bobby Jackson and Gene Van Horn and Jason Wiebe next time you're at ReaperCon. And maybe the sculptors will sculpt some Dad Bod minis and submit them to Ron, and maybe Ron will then think they're cool and buy them. But I, alas, do not have any say in what is produced. It took Ron 15 years to get me a kitsune? 12 years to get me a 5-headed dragon? And that's how much impact I've got, guys. You don't want me asking for anything. Minotaur makes sense, I think. Alright, and I do need to kind of separate these fingers up here and separate them from the bracelet, and then I think we'll start to wrap it. Oh yeah, I've gone over. So Justin, do we have an awesome person to raid?
Let me see.
There we go, got the fingers. And where one hand overlaps the other, we also want to put a shadow, i.e. lining. Lining is just shading, it's just targeted shading. You will understand it better if you think about it that way. As Justin looks for our raid. Pass the Monday love on to everybody, guys. There, I've got some actual shading there now.
I think we should probably raid Brush for Hire.
Oh, okay, sounds great. Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, there we go. So we've got our skins starting to get set up. We'll finish out our skin next time. Tomorrow, though, is Rock Troll. We're going to continue Rock Troll. He's so close to done. Alrighty, guys. I will talk to you later. Have a fantastic day. And I hope everything goes awesome for you today. And we'll see you tomorrow with Rock Troll. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys very much. We'll see you later today for Miniature Monday.